Record player, everybody. I'm Scott, as always. Today, I am thrilled to have with me a gentleman who I first saw perform live probably over 3 decades ago. And now I'm completely stoked that I'm going to get the chance again very soon to see him again. Big Sugar hits the road out west in a week or two before heading out our way to play shows, including in our general proximity here in the Toronto area in Guelph, Oakville, and of course at the Rose Theatre in Brampton, a show that will be presented in part by us here at TRP. One of the best guitar players and frontmen that you will ever see perform, Mr. Gordie Johnson, is here in the Record Player with us today. How are you, Gordie?
Well, that's a good morning. Thank you.
New Year been good to you so far?
No, I've been knocked down with COVID for about 2 weeks, so just getting back on my feet. So luckily in time for the tour to start. I'm starting to feel like a human being again. But yeah, I mean, no, other than that, yeah, no, the 24 has been pretty good so far.
Good to hear. I mentioned in the intro that the first time I saw you play live was three decades ago, 30 years ago, if not more.
I was like 12 years old.
No, I was in probably 18, I think. I got in underage, I'm sure of it. And it was probably at some place stupid. I can't even, and I'll be honest with you, there was a lot of alcohol and stuff involved back in those days. So you might not remember those days either, for all I know. It was back in the probably, I want to say either the Rivoli, Lee's Palace, like Cameron House, somewhere in
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Probably Cameron House, because we used to head by Queen Street all the time. And
I used to live at the Cameron House, so
yeah, well, then that's probably where it was.
a good place to find me. Yeah.
What was it like back in those days in the Toronto music scene and living at the Cameron House and playing in all those little bars and stuff?
Well, I was right in the heart of it. It was the greatest. It was almost like the School of Hard Knocks University, living above a bar, right in the heart of the biggest city in Canada at the time, anyway. But that music scene was really. I really didn't need to go north of Bloor Street ever. Like I just stayed between the Lakeshore or like Queen Street and Bloor Street, and there were all these clubs you could play music 7 nights a week. I mean, some weeks I played 9 nights a week. I remember I think it was the year I turned 27 or something. What year was that? But I was living at the Cameron House, and I counted the week of my birthday. I did like 22 gigs in a week. I was like doing 3 gigs a day and 4 gigs on Sunday, just something crazy like that. But you could do that in those days. There was somewhere to play all the time. And well, if my memory serves, I mean, all those gigs paid. There was no like playing for a tip jar. Although I did play on the street quite a bit at Queen and Spadina. I had put my case out on the sidewalk and sang for change a few cold, rainy days when I needed to just get enough money to go get some steamed fish and broccoli up in Chinatown, So yeah, I remember the
So you were
struggle.
at the Cameron House, right?
The Cameron was great too because I could do matinee gigs. I used to do a matinee on Saturday. I would just sit with a dobro and play and sing blues. And depending how late my gig was the night before, I'd show up down there in my pajamas with my with my dobro. It wasn't some kind of weird stage presence. I was just like, oh my God, I got to start my matinee because this is how I earn my rent around there. Was playing whenever they required me to play. I'd run downstairs and play. So the Cameron House was a great like creative center. The building was just full of outside the box thinkers. Even the management of the place, it wasn't just like your regular bar management. They were all artists and kind of visionary too. And we were creating something on Queen Street in those days. It wasn't like we were trying to replicate a scene from somewhere else, or it wasn't like we were all focused on making it big. We all just wanted to make really great music. So that was a very fertile environment to come up in.
I want to this. I'll never get a chance to tell anybody this again. But one of the people that was instrumental in you guys getting signed and was sort of moving on and moving up was a fellow by the name of Tom Tremuth.
Yeah.
Was a producer and a manager. He worked with Spoons, Helix, Honeymoon Suite, a whole ton of
Yeah.
bands, Cowboy Junkies, you guys. What is 6 degrees of separation for you? And this, I'll never get an opportunity to tell anyone this but you. Um, Tom Tremuth's wife was my French teacher in grade 6 and grade 8.
Okay, small world.
Right?
Tom, I owe Tom a great thanks, actually. It's funny, hindsight and certainly maturity gives you a clearer picture of how things were, as opposed to where we were at the time. I wasn't somebody I wasn't trying to get a record deal. I didn't have pretensions of being a rock star, songs on the radio and all that. I was so focused on just making the music that we were making. It wasn't really on trend. I was only peripherally aware that there was this thing called grunge happening because I didn't listen to the radio. I didn't frequent those kind of places. I wasn't listening to those kind of records. I was listening to Miles Davis records. I didn't I didn't know what was going on. So for Tom to have taken a chance on us was really off brand for him too. Like he wasn't focused on anything like us at the time. And I don't think it was like, oh, well, this is going to be the next big thing. We were never going to be the next big thing. So for Tom to have taken a chance on us, especially with the first record, because I was somewhat inexperienced, but he still let me have a lot of say in how the recording went down. He didn't really, I think he'll admit freely too, he didn't really understand the music or where we were coming from, but he could tell it was good. So give him that. But he did give, for a guy who hadn't really earned my stripes yet, he gave me a lot of say in how it all went down. And then by the time we made our second record, 500 Pounds, which is the other record we did for Tom, by that time, I didn't even have a band. I had one guy I played with who was a drummer, Al Cross, at the time. And he actually sat me down at lunch and said, look, I don't know what you're trying to do. I gotta confess, I don't know what exactly you're getting at here musically, but I'll pay for another record. And if you wanna, I think you could be a good producer for your own record. So get an engineer and get a studio, make sure it's not too expensive, don't spend too much money, and I'll pay for it. That's
That's a lot of
look
faith.
back at that now. That's an awful big leap of faith for a skinny guy with a skinny tie and a big jazz guitar. Nobody was looking to sign the next blues guy. So yeah, no, I owe Tom a great debt of thanks. And I didn't ever expect Tom to break us worldwide. Like I said, we weren't fixing to be the next big thing. So everything that happened is a result of him taking that chance with us and having no grand idea about what it was going to be. Just gave us a chance to create what we were doing. And I guess he figured, look, the world can handle something different out there. So yeah, no, he really deserves a great big thank you from us.
We were a bunch of great Sixers, and she would bring in a record and say, "My husband's in this band," and it was called True Myth or whatever it was. And we used to sit there and go, "Oh, this is so cool! Her husband's in the band." And then when I realized that who he was related to you when I was doing the research for this, I thought, "Well, that's awesome." I spent nearly every day in around 92, 93 listening to a band called Archangels, which one of the greatest records ever made, in my opinion. Charlie Sexton, Doyle Bramall. That got me into listening to sort of more Canadian blues rock at the time. And that was right when your album came out, Colin James, Colin Linden, that kind of stuff. Big Sugar had a vibe that was similar to, but yet a little different. It had a different sound, different structure, different little bit of everything. It was raw compared to a lot of other stuff at that time. Where were you getting your influences from?
Well, I I think what's different, especially Big Sugar from that period, we're talking about the 500 pounds record, which is amazing because that record has just continued to make me friends and influence people for decades. We got our first big break from the Archangels. Funny you should mention it, because they were on their first tour promoting that one record. The day I got a booking agent, I got an actual like booking agent who could get me gigs outside of Queen Street. The day I signed a deal, I went to the agency, signed the deal, got on the streetcar, rode across Toronto, got back to the Cameron House. By the time I got upstairs to my room, my answering machine, the tape, played back my answering machine, and it was Jeff, my agent, saying, I got you a gig, but you got to get to Kitchener tonight. It's like 6 o'clock. You got to get to Kitchener. You have like 90 minutes to get there, and you're going to open for the Archangels.
Really?
I was like,
Wow.
I never heard it. I don't know who these Archangels are, but that's sure, I'll do it. So being the two guys, right, put on our suits and ties and threw an amp in the car and drove to Lulu's in Kitchener. And the deal was we were opening for the band that was opening for the Archangels. It was like the doors were at 9 o'clock. The Archangels weren't going on till midnight. So they wanted someone to play at doors, which was us, which meant the Archangels had all their gear set up, and then the Jayhawks were set up in front of them. And Big Sugar had about 3 feet from the front of the stage. So the kick drum was right up against the front of the stage. It was only about the depth of a drum kit. And I had to stand actually sideways so that my boots wouldn't hang over the end of the stage in order to not fall onto the dance floor. And we played to absolutely nobody. No, that's not true. The staff were putting out ashtrays and baskets of peanuts. Imagine 1,200, about a 1,200 capacity room, and this great huge shed of a place, and the staff cleaning up, from the night before and dumping out ashtrays and putting out clean ashtrays and peanuts, and we played to nobody. And we played for 45 minutes. And I thought, wow, this is the big time. Now we've got an agent. I can look forward to more of this. What is this? We got off stage, and Chris Layton and Charlie Sexton of the Archangels, Chris, of course, being famous for having played with Stevie Ray Vaughan as well. They were playing pool backstage and heard us and came to the wings and watched our entire set. And we got off stage. So it turns out 2 people actually paid attention to our set. And it was those 2 guys.
That's a
And
good
like,
to have.
they were like, man, that was really far out. Hey, the other guy from the band just got here. Do you think y'all might want to play again? Like, sure, when? Well, now. So we had already hauled our gear off stage, like we were already putting it back in the car. And the promoter's going, whoa, what's happening now? I'm not paying you guys double. It's like, no, like, don't worry about it. Chris Layton brokered it all, worked it out with the promoters. Like, put these guys on again. There are people in the room. Put them on again. We'll start a little bit later, but don't worry, just do this for me. So they put us on again, and we played another set. But in those days, like, we played so much around Toronto, we could play for 7 hours and not repeat a song. So nothing to us. We're like, oh, play another 45 minutes. So we played all different songs, which also kind of messed them up. They were like, what? Wow. And you guys played all different stuff the second set. So we stuck around and watched them play. And at the end of it, Chris said, hey, we've got about 8 shows in Canada this week. Hey, would y'all want to come and open for us every night? Like, yes, we would. So another, just, they heard Ride Like Hell and 500 Pounds record and said, well, come on tour with us. And at the end of the tour, Chris was like, hey, man, y'all should come down to Austin, Texas. Come and check it out. So I did, man. I flew down to Austin on his invite and stayed with him for a couple of weeks and played at the old Antones and the Continental Club. And played with Chris and Tom, Double Trouble, and like what a great, that was really the start of Big Sugar. Wow, somebody actually cares about Big Sugar, and thing kind of just took off from there.
That's incredible. I always wanted more Archangels. Never got more Archangels. I always wanted that.
They still play once in a while around Texas. We see them, you know, every year or so. They'll do a short run of shows, just like Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, or something. So I get to see them once in a while.
Um, I going from Cameron House to Lulu's. Saw you again at RPM in Toronto. Saw the Edge Fest in Toronto at Molson Park. Our Lady Peace 5440. You guys, Tea Party, Killjoys. What a phenomenal show that was. And then so you're going from here, and then in 1999 to here. Rolling Stones. Getting an opportunity to open up for the Rolling Stones, which how few people will ever be able to say that they got that chance. How did that come about for Big Sugar to be on the same stage as the Stones?
It was on invitation. I mean, I don't know if you noticed the Rolling Stones, they always pair themselves up with kind of whoever the biggest artist at the time is, no matter what the genre. And I think it's a bit of a flex to say, we're going to pick the biggest artist there is and make them open for us because we're the Stones and you're so not. So we were not the biggest thing at the time. I mean, we were on a roll. We were on a high. We just played Woodstock 99, super fun. Like we're having a great year. But some of those guys in the Stones were Big Sugar fans. Keith especially had our records, and Charlie Watts was a great fan of Big Sugar. We had recorded a couple of jazz songs on our early records, and he just loved the mix of heavy guitar but jazz drumming and a little bit of reggae thrown in there. They were all big reggae fans, Keith especially. So they were really fond of Big Sugar, and we had a mutual friend who was really close with them, like from childhood. And he was a graphic artist and designer who lived in Toronto. He was a great friend of mine. Amazing record collector and archivist, and just knew everything about all the music I was interested in. And so I'd been around to see the Stones a bunch. I had never seen them play a show, but I had been to rehearsals and I'd been to sound checks, and I'd hung around all day or for an evening at the, you know, their Satanic Majesty's request. The phone would ring and say, you've been summoned. You'll go to the Senator Jazz Club and you're expected there. Like, oh, I'm expected. Well, then I best get going then. To shine up my shoes and put on a nice shirt and
On my way.
yeah, so I had some contact with them, and got to sit in on rehearsals with the Stones on a number of occasions where it was just the core band and myself sitting next to Charlie Watts, just sitting on the drum riser. So there was some familiarity there, and they were really, really kind to me, and they're just very warm, genuine people, just music fans. So when we got to open for them, it wasn't a total surprise, except that I'm looking around going, I mean, you could have Bryan Adams open for you. You could have anybody, but it's Toronto. You wanted us. Okay, amazing. So we got to hang out with Charlie, and they were the best. We learned so much from that one night playing with the Rolling Stones. Here's little Big Sugar, and we got a full sound check. We got to meet the jumbo screen, the video director. He says, this is the gentleman who will be overseeing the video taping of your show and broadcasting it on all the screens and stuff. So tell our light guy what you'd like. What? I mean, I expected they would just give us like one light and a little postage stamp. No, you can have the whole stage. You can't use the catwalk. That's for Mick and the lads. But Mick likes a rug. Do you want the rug or do you want the rug gone? I guess gone is fine. Thanks. Sure. So they roll out the record. They're like, you can mix as loud as the Rolling Stones. You can't go louder than them, but they don't really put the brakes on you. It's not like, okay, you get half the PA and two lights. No, they give you the full thing. The Rolling Stones opinion is, if you guys have an amazing show, we'll all have an amazing show. if we want you to warm up the crowd, why would we put the shackles on you and hobble you down to where you can't play loud? They gave us a nice long set, full video screens, the whole deal. Dressing room, same thing. Big, beautiful dressing room. Catering. You're eating the same food and drinking the same wine. Charlie goes and opens beautiful vintage French wine, and you're expected to partake. And there's no class structure, which is weird because they really are royalty. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
100%.
nerve-wracking to be in their presence. Like, do I make eye contact? Do I not make eye contact? And they're very unassuming, just like, yeah, mate, you're allowed to smile. Come on, have at it, mate. Don't touch the shepherd's pie till keeps that is. Right, but I mean, that's the only rule. You don't crack the crust on the shepherd's pie because that's for Keith. After he's had some, have at it. Best shepherd's pie you ever tasted in your life. So that just really informed us. So when we're the big band out there and we've got opening act, younger bands or whoever it is, always treat them with their equals, treat them with respect, make sure they've got dressing room rider. I hate seeing an opening band that hasn't even got a case of beer. I actually went to a promoter in Lethbridge one night because our opening act they didn't have beer, they didn't have towels. I'm like, hey, these kids just sweat through their jeans to put on a great show for a sold out house here in Lethbridge. Can you get them a case of beer? Guys, what do you like? Corona? Get them Corona. That was Nickelback.
Wow.
I mean, they were just some young kids from Tabor, Alberta, or wherever they're from. And like, they weren't nobody at the time. They were just some Alberta dudes, put on a great rock show. I was like, how can they not have a case of beer? What did the Rolling Stones teach me about that? So every opening act we've ever had, I think we're still on first name basis with all of them. I could go down the list from Danko Jones, Bedouin Soundclash, the Trues. I mean, there's this long list of bands that opened for us when they were baby bands just starting out. We always treated them with the utmost respect and admiration. It's like, guys, have a great show. You learn from the best.
You've been there. You've been there. So absolutely, 100%. During COVID time, we had. I want to talk about the show and get everybody hyped up for the Rose. During COVID time, we had anniversaries of older records, reissues of Heated, Hemi Vision. Now 500 pounds, which has been re-released by Jack White's Third Man Records. When did you find out that Jack White was a Big Sugar fan?
I'm gonna say about a year ago, maybe it's a bit longer ago now. I didn't remember that I met him when he was a kid. Really, he was still just a kid. How old would he have been? Maybe 21, 20. I follow him on Instagram. I mean, I dig his music. I always have done. I was like, oh, what's Jack White doing? Always something quality, just weird sounds and great sounding records. And doesn't care what anyone thinks. Just his vision is this whole thing. I love it. And he posted a page from a tour diary from 1993 or something thereabouts, 92, 93. Jack White tour diary. He was the drummer. Jack White was playing drums with Goober and the Peas. Like, I remember Goober and the Peas. I remember them. They're like kind of like a weird psychobilly kind of. I don't remember why. I know I'm reading this tour diary Jack White thing and going, oh, check it out. Okay, Goober and the Peas. They played the Continental Club in Austin, Texas. Jack found this awesome store where he was able to get white face makeup, which comes if you're Jack White. It's a white face makeup, and got to meet Gordie from Big Sugar backstage at the Continental Club. And I read it, and I'm like, what are they putting in this CBD oil? Good God. Am I seeing things? I was like, why is that a big deal? What? You met the guy from Big Sugar. Are we talking about? No, it's Gordie from Big Sugar. That was the weirdest thing ever. I'm looking at that, and it was like a flashback that just hit me like a lightning bolt where I went, that weird white face paint kid playing drums with Goober and the Peas. Chris Layton and I stood backstage and watched them and thought, man, that kid's got a very high level of commitment to this trip. This is long before the White Stripes or anything, and no one ever heard of him or cared about him. But we saw him back in those days, and it was this flashback. I remember it's like, oh God. Of course, you don't know who's anybody, everybody's somebody at some point in their life. But so I forgot that I met him. And so that was weird. And not long after that, we got a cold call from Jack's cousin who runs the record label, who said, look, Jack's a big fan, and we'd love to release 500 pounds on vinyl. And that was just like, I needed to be slapped in the face. I was like, this is Big Sugar. This is we're talking. This is. Are you sure? We're talking about. Like, yeah, no. It's Jack's been to see every one of your shows when you played. Because Detroit, we used to play all the time. I lived in Windsor, grew up there, and started out playing in Detroit. So we played Detroit all the time. Apparently, Jack had been to see us every time we played in the early '90s. He was there. Well, apparently taking notes, like, oh, slide guitar, that's a good idea. I don't know, I'm sure
Never
he's got
know.
a
You
list
never
of it.
know who's in the audience, right?
Well, and if I think back to it, a bunch of those shows, it's not like we showed up in glory. I mean, there were maybe 15 people at some of those early shows, not very many people. So that's another lesson in, some of the greatest opportunities I've had in my life came when I was being awesome in front of nobody. You know what I mean? How good are you on your worst day? How good are you when no one in the room cares? It turns out at most turning points in my career, we were being awesome in front of nobody except the staff, but the Archangel sauce, that was enough. Those two guys was enough to make a whole other chapter begin and open doors for us. Same thing with Jack, where that's 30 years ago, 35 years ago, even. This impressionable kid was sneaking into a bar to watch you play. And apparently I was having a good day because this many years later, they want to release a record. And he put out a little video talking about the record. And it was, I'm still kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. I'm like, God, hang on now. Is this somebody pranking me here? Is this like a deep fake AI thing, or is he really digs the record? But I've held one in my hand, so I know it's really happening. Yeah.
Is he going to re-release any other? Has there been any talk about any other Big Sugar records come?
I don't know, actually. We sure have had a great relationship with everybody at the label there. They've been super good to deal with, and I can honestly, I can't think of another record label I would even want to deal with, just because they're, the creative team there, it really is just of the highest order. It's, they only really care about the artistic integrity of the thing. They go out of their way to market the thing that it already is, as opposed to like a marketing team that's like, oh, now we got to get you a haircut, we got to change this, we got to change that, we got to change all these things to make you marketable. If they didn't like you to begin with, they just wouldn't bother, I think.
Didn't I like it because of what it was? So.
And I'd love to be on the same label as Charlie Patton. That would be Charlie Patton.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the show. I mean, I've like I said, I've seen you in so many different venues. We're going to see a theater type show in Brampton, presented in part by us here at TRP, Rose Theater in Brampton, March 21st. We'll plug. What's the difference between what do we expect from this Big Sugar show? I know it involves mostly the 500 pounds record, obviously.
Well, especially because we're putting on a more theatrical presentation, it gives us a chance to, we'll play the 500 pounds record in its entirety, as well as songs from that era that we would have played on tour in 1994. Some, of course, a lot of those songs we haven't played since 1993, 94. So it's a real kick for us to dust off old set lists and old tapes and find out, like, well, where were we coming from creatively at the time?
There's got to be details on that record that you've never played, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, there's songs that we never ever have played, but there were B-sides. Third Man's also put out a couple of bonus tracks from the same session that came out on other, just scattered EPs and B-sides and things. So they've got a couple of bonus tracks. So we're able to put on that really like an era correct version of that. We've never been a band that replicates what's on the record note for note anyway. Never, not back then, not now, not ever. So it requires a level of commitment to breathing life into those things and making them relevant. I can't stand up there and sing something even that I'm not affiliated with, So I've had to dig back into the emotions that went into the whole thing and take a different approach. I mean, we're playing using instruments from that era, because that's, there were no double neck guitars at that time. There wasn't a bunch of dub reggae effects and things going on. It was a little more, our jazz influences were there, our blues influences were more on our sleeve. So to be able to put on that kind of a presentation, a theater is a great place to be able to do that. Especially since, we don't have an opening act. We're the opening act. 500 pounds is the first set, and then we go put on, we put on different wardrobe and come out and do a second set of songs from all the other records and eras and hits and other songs that we don't play on tour very often. So it's really fun preparing for that kind of a show, to take, it's not just a smoky bar where we often will play without a set list. We'll just go freestyle it and just, play songs, mixed bag from all over the place. But doing like 2 sets are just over an hour each, but being able to, script it all a little bit and think of how to create the vibe of that time. So it's really, I didn't think we'd ever have an opportunity to do that. So this is, we've really spent a lot of time rehearsing and preparing and, crafting the show this way, down to the, what color ties we're wearing,
I wasn't sure I'd ever get an opportunity to see it again, so I'm looking forward to it. Best of luck on the tour. We hope to catch up with you again when you're near here. Once again, starts in Western Canada in a couple of weeks on February 27th in Red Deer. Then you're on to Calgary, Winnipeg, and then getting to us in this area anyway, around mid-March in Oakville, Guelph. And in Brampton at the Rose Theatre on March 21st, that we presented by us here at TRP, and we'll have some tickets to give away to some of our as well. So thank you so much, Gordie. It's been a hoot. I hope you're feeling back up and running and normal after your COVID, and good luck.
If I can get this bird off my shoulder, it'll all.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck, man. Thank you so much for being with us.
All right, my pleasure.